Lesson 2.3. Now we're going to include order of operations with powers. So not only do we need to know about the powers, but we have to start working with the order of operation involving them. This is going to be the basics. You're only going to work with just a power itself. Later on, we're going to get into how to combine powers by multiplication, division, and all that kind of stuff. So in grade 6 and 7, we did order of operations. And you were shown a similar problem to this one and asked, what is the example? And in this case, there's two ways of doing it. The most logical person is going to go, well, 6 plus 4 is 10, and then divide that by 2, and that gives you 5. Unfortunately, we know that this is not correct because we have something called BEDMAS, B-E-D-M-A-S. And for BEDMAS, brackets come first, then exponents, divide and multiply as a group, and add and subtract as a group. So when you have a choice between adding and dividing, the dividing always comes first. So 4 divided by 2 should be a 2, and then 6 plus 2 is 8, so your answer should have been an 8. So we have to use the brackets. So what does BEDMAS stand for? Well, it's really simple. Brackets, exponents, divide and multiply occurs or complete them in the order they show up. All right? And adding and subtracting is the same thing. These two are in the order they show up. They are a group. They are not an order. So you do not add before you subtract. You have to take a look at whatever's there first, addition or subtraction, and do that. So in a question like 6 take away 3 plus 5, you do not go to this and say, well, adding is before subtracting, so therefore I've got to do this first. That is incorrect. All right? In fact, if you do that, you'll probably have a problem. So anyway, so you'd be doing this first. 6 minus 3 is 3, and then you would add to get an 8. Okay? So having done that, it's the same. Oops, sorry to mess things up here again. There. Hit it with my knuckle when I was going to grab my eraser. All right, let's go to the next question. So in our first example, we need to divide first, and then we need to add. So our first answer should be 6 plus 2, and giving us an 8. All right. Now there's some rules that we're going to use in order to make marking easier, and that is very simple. First of all, you're going to only do one calculation per line. Simple. Keep that in mind. You're always going to work downwards. These are expressions, so I should never see an equal sign appear. You can't change an expression into an equation. So let's take a look at 4 times 6 plus 2 minus 10. If you remember BEDMAS, B-E-D-M-A-S, the first thing you're going to do is take a look for brackets. And we do have brackets right here. So we're going to do 6 plus 2 first. So my first line is going to be 4 times 8 minus 10. I do the brackets first. Everything else has to be brought along because each line has to have the same value as you go along. Now, I have a choice between subtracting and multiplying. Multiplying is here. Subtracting is in the bottom of the second group, so multiplying comes next, 4 times 8 being 32. And now finally, 32 take away 10 is 22. Every one of these lines, if you're trying to figure out where you made a mistake, every one of them, if you put them in your calculator, should come out to be 22. If one of them doesn't, then you have a mistake. So the way to double check this is real simple. Put this into your calculator as one run, and then find out what your answer is, and then do the question. If you come up with the answer you're supposed to have, you're doing great. But if you turns out that when you get to the final answer, it's not what you're supposed to have, then go back each line and try to find out which line you made the mistake in. The one that doesn't equal the final answer is the one you made a mistake, and you can double check that. Let's take a look at the next one. In this one, you'll notice I've got brackets also, and inside the brackets, I now have a choice between subtraction and multiplication. Since we're doing one calculation per line, you look inside the brackets and you choose between multiplying and subtracting. And since multiplying is before subtracting, this is first. All right? And then this would be second. So multiplying 2 times 5, that's equal to 10. So my next line is 4 plus bracket 16 minus 10 bracket divided by 3. Now I can do my subtraction. And I've got 4 plus 16 take away 10 is 6 divided by 3. Now I have a choice between adding and dividing. Adding is here, dividing is up here. Dividing comes first, so 6 divided by 3 is 2. And then 4 plus 2 is 6. All right. Now that's probably what we did in grade 6. Let's move on now to including decimals. You can use a calculator to do the individual calculations, but you still have to write down what you did. All right, so taking a look at this, we've got BEDMAS to look at. And BEDMAS is brackets, exponents, divide and multiply. This is a group, and adding and subtracting is a group. So taking a look at my question, I've got a plussing inside of brackets. So this is the first thing you're going to do. We're going to keep the 12.376. That's not going anywhere because we haven't done it yet. So 12.376 divided by, now 4.75 plus 1.2 gives us 5.95. And you can use your calculator to get that. Now, copy out the rest of it. All right. Now, the next line, we have to go through and figure out what we have. Well, we got a divide here. We've got a plus, got a times, and we've got a minus. So I've got a divide, a plus, a times, and a minus. Now, if you go here in BEDMAS, you'll notice that I've got rid of all my brackets. They're gone. There's no exponents to worry about. There's gone. So now I've got divide and multiply in order, and I have add, subtract in order. So in order to make this work, let's take a look at divide and multiply in order. Now I have a divide and the multiply right here and right here. So I have to divide first, then multiply. So this is my next job right there. So taking this and getting rid of it, so I have room. So 12.376 divided by 5.95 is 2.08 plus 2.45 times 0.2 minus 1.84. I did my dividing, so now I can do the multiplying. So here's my next one. That means I'm going to have 2.08 plus the product of 2.45 times 0.2, which is 0.49, minus 1.84. So now I have adding and subtracting as a choice. We do adding and subtracting in the order they appear. That means that this one comes next. And that gives you 2.08 plus 0.49, that is 2.57 minus 1.84. And then finally, I can do my subtraction, which gives me a final answer of 0.73. So again, every one of these lines should equal 0.73. You want to find out if you made a mistake, all you have to do is go through and put them all in your calculator and find out which one doesn't equal it, because that'll be where you made your mistake. If you go through every single line and they always equal 0.73, you've done your calculations correct, and hopefully you haven't missed a step. All right, I want you to pause the recording, and I want you to do 7 times 3.13 plus 42.8 divided by 0.05. All right, so give that a try, and I'm going to go and shut down an alarm. All right, so the first thing you have to do is take a look at our choices. We've got BEDMAS to choose from. Remember, these are groups. So I've got times, plus, divide. And we do multiply and divide in the order they appear. So I've got a multiplication that comes before my division. So the 7 times 3.13, this is done first. So that gives me 21.91. Copy the rest down. Now I have a choice between adding and dividing. Here's adding down here. And dividing is up here. It comes before adding. So I've got to do my dividing first. 42.8 divided by 0.5 gives me 21.91, doesn't change. But then I've got 85.6 here. And now I can add them together. And my final line, 107.51. All right. So much for review of grade 7 and 8. Let's move on to our next one. Now what we're going to do is we're going to include exponents. Now, all we're really doing is, in terms of BEDMAS, is this little e here, we've never really used it much. but now it comes into play. If you take a look at 4 plus 3 squared, you now have a choice of a power, which is the exponent, and addition. So you have to complete the exponent or the power first. So 4 plus 9. And now we can complete the addition, which is 13. So in reality, nothing's really changed much in terms of what we're doing, except we just have to consider one more type of a calculation, and that's the power. 5 take away 3, all squared, plus 4. So the first thing we have to do is take care of the subtraction inside our brackets. So 5 take away 3 is a 2. Don't lose the squared because we haven't used it yet. Now we can do the power. 2 to the power of 2 is 4. Keep the other one. And lastly, we can do the multiplication. So your final answer is 16. So now I'd like to try to pause the equation, pause the recording and do this question, please. All right, 2 minus 7. So the first thing we got to do is go inside our brackets and we're going to do the subtraction. So 2 take away 7 is negative 5 inside the brackets. Remember that, divided by 5 squared. Now, remember the negative 5 is important that you keep those brackets in because that forces the negative to be part of the base. So now, negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5 is negative 125 divided by 5 squared. Now that I've got the first exponent done, I can now work on the next exponent. I guess I should do powers from left to right. So I've got negative 125, and now I can divide that by 5 times 5, which is 25. So this is the last power I just did. And finally, I can do my dividing. 125 divided by 25 is 5, and a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So my final answer is negative 5. All right, let's get a little bit more complicated. Now we get 2 times negative 3 bracket squared minus 6, and everything is squared. So let's go inside the brackets first, and we're going to take a look at all the work that's inside the brackets right here. That's where we're going to start making our choices. And I've got a choice of a multiplication, a power, and a subtraction. Well, we know that in BEDMAS, we're going to work with our brackets first, and we're working with our brackets. And inside my brackets, I actually have an exponent. So negative 3, the negative is part of the base, so this is negative 3 times negative 3. So calculate the power inside the brackets. And that gives me 2 times negative 3 times negative 3 is 9 minus 6, and that's all still kept inside the brackets of a power of 2. Now, inside those brackets, I have a choice between multiplication and subtraction, so my next one is the multiplying. So 2 times 9 is 18. That's still inside brackets. Okay, so now we can do our subtraction. 18 take away 6 is 12. And we are still in squared brackets. And finally, I can do the power. 12 times 12 is 144. And there's your answer. Okay, time for you to try one on your own. Here is the next example. 18 squared plus 5 to the 0, all in brackets, squared minus bracket negative 5 bracket 3. So pause the recording and try this one. Okay, so inside here we get 2 sets of brackets. So we're going to start with the first set of brackets, and we're going to do what choices we have to do inside there. So we're going to start with the first pair of brackets, and we're going to do the powers in order from left to right. So my first one is going to be 18 squared. 18 times 18 is 324 plus 5 to the 0. Remember, this is all squared, divided by negative 5 inside brackets to the 3. So I did the first power. Now I can complete the second power inside the brackets. 5 to the 0 is 1. So 324 plus 1, all squared, divided by negative 5 cubed. Wait, so now I've got rid of all my powers. I can now move into my adding. 324 plus 1 is 325. Don't forget, I still have my squaring to keep track of and my negative 5 cubing to work with. So now I have a choice between powers, or exponents, division, exponents. So my next step would be to do the powers from left to right. So 325 squared is next, and that means 105,625. And I haven't done my negative 5 cubed yet. That is next. And negative 5 is a negative base. So it's negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5. That means this is negative 125. And of course, the last thing I can do now is my dividing, and that is, oh, sorry, I suppose I should say the second power. And now I can do the dividing. And that gives me negative, because a positive divided by negative is a negative. And 105,625 divided by 125 on your calculator is 845. There you go. Hopefully you did it correctly. So that's how we do ones which have just a simple one-liner. Here's a problem from the textbook. Lynn has a square swimming pool 2 meters deep with a side length of 4 meters. The swimming pool is joined to a circular tub 1 meter deep with a diameter of 2 meters. Lynn adds 690 grams of chlorine to the pool and hot tub each week. This expression below represents how much chlorine is present in 1 meter cubed of water. The suggested concentration for her pool is 20 grams per cubic meter of water. Is it close to the concentration? So what we have to do is, using the fact that pi is equal to 3.14, we have to calculate this calculation. Now, rather than recopying 690 over, 690 over, 690 over, we're going to separate them. Since the 690 is already solved, we're just going to put this kind of in a holding pattern. We'll deal with this at the end when we do the final division, which is the fraction. So let's take a look at 2 times 4 squared plus pi times 1 cubed. This is our next step. All right. Now remember, it's BEDMAS. And in my BEDMAS, I've got exponents. So this is my next because there is no brackets. My first set of exponents is 4 squared. So this is going to be 2 times 4 squared. Well, 4 times 4 is 16. Plus pi, which is 3.14, times 1 cubed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and do the second power. 1 cubed is 1. So I've got 2 times 16 plus 3.14 times 1 times 1 times 1, which is 1. Now I have a choice of multiply, add, or multiply. Since multiplication and division occur in the order that they appear, my next step is to do my multiplication, and I have to do the first one first. So 2 times 16, that's 32. Plus, keep everything else here. And now I can do the second part, which is I can add or multiply 3.14 times 1. So now I have 32 plus 3.14 times 1, which is 3.14. Now that my multiplying is all taken care of, I can now add up 32 and 30.14, and I get 35.14. Now remember, the one on the right was a denominator. So my denominator is 35.14, and my numerator is 690. So on your calculator, divide this. Oh, I sneezed. All right, so divide 690 divided by 35.14, and your final answer is 19 point, and I'll keep a couple of decimal places here, 635, so that'll be 64. Now, if you go back to the question says that she's supposed to be putting in concentration of her pool of 20. We calculated that what she actually got was 19.64, so it's close to what's recommended. There you go. All right, so let's take and have you try one of these without a word problem. I'm just going to take and give you the next page here. Here is 2 to the 5 minus 3 times 5, all bracketed in with a cube, and then 3 cubed minus 17. So first thing you're going to do the numerator, then you're going to do the denominator, and then the very end you'll form your fraction and you'll divide it out. So your numerator, make sure you copy it correctly so you don't mess up. And here's your denominator. So I want you to finish that off. Pause the recording and finish it. Well, let's take a look. We have powers to do first. So in BEDMAS, here's my exponents. There is brackets there, so if we take a look at the brackets, I've got to do the brackets inside before I do this cubing. So brackets, now I have a choice between multiply, or power, subtract, and multiply. Exponents come first, so I got to worry about the 2 to the 5 first. Well, 2 to the 5 is 32, minus 3 times 5, all cubed. So now that I got rid of the power, I can now move into the next step. I have a choice between subtraction, which is way down here, and multiply, which is up here. So multiply comes next. 3 times 5 is 15. So my next number is 32, take away 15. And now that I've got rid of my multiply, I can take a look at the final one, which is 17. Now, don't forget, this is all cubed. So now that I got the brackets done, I can now go 17 cubed. That's 17 times 17 times 17. So this is now 4913. On the right-hand side, I have a choice between multiplying and powers. Exponents come first, so 3 times 3 times 3 is 27, minus 17. And when you divide that, you get 10. So now you go back and you put your fraction back together, because this was a fraction when you began. You have 4913 as our numerator. Our denominator was 10, so 4913 divided by 10 is 491.3. All right, pause the recording and try the next one. All right, now this has what's called embedded brackets. So you got to go to the brackets on the very inside, because first thing, if you take a look at the whole thing here, we have to worry about the brackets first. And inside these brackets, you have another set of brackets. So they have to take precedence. Now, inside this set of brackets here, we now have 6 to the 0 minus 2 to the 1. So my first goal is 6 to the 0. So you have to be careful how you copy this, so make sure you leave yourself enough room and be neat, because this is where mistakes happen. 6 to the 0 is 1. All right, so I'm still working on the inside of the brackets. I've got rid of the 6 to the 0. The next thing is to get rid of the 2 to the 1. So again, 2 to the 6 divided by bracket 2 cubed times 1 minus 2, and that is inside square brackets. Now, 1 minus 2 can now be done inside these brackets, and that gives me negative 1. So now we're up to 2 to the 6 divided by bracket 2 cubed, and now this is negative 1, and we've now completed the inside set of brackets. So now we can move out and do the next set of brackets. And in between here, I've got to multiply when things are side by side. So 2 to the 3 comes first. So 2 to the 3 is 2 times 2 times 2. That's an 8. And we're multiplying it by negative 1. And that's inside our square brackets. And we're going to take 2 to the 6 and divide by whatever's there. So now, 8 times negative 1, that's negative 8. So we've done all the square bracket stuff. We're finished. So we have 2 to the 6 divided by negative 8. So our next step, and I'm going to move over here, and if you get into a problem on your page and you don't run out of room or whatever, you can just do an arrow over and continue. So 2 to the 6 is next, and that's 2 multiplied by itself 6 times. That is 64. Divided by, and we have our bracket, negative 8 here. And 64 divided by 8 is 8. And a positive divided by a negative is a negative. So your final answer is negative 8. Okay, now what I'd like you to do is we're going to go to the next question. I want you to try putting all this into your calculator. Take whatever shortcuts you can and see if you can get these correct. All right? So I'll pause the recording and use your calculator. Okay, let's see how accurate you are. Well, the first one is actually 11660.04167. The second one is 1. The next one is negative 1539. And the last one is 3969. Now, what normally happens in my classes when I do this is a lot of people get these wrong. It's because they're trying to put in too much in their calculator and it doesn't work very well because they're not efficient or accurate enough doing it. So for sometimes, what it's easy to do is to break it into pieces and do multiple calculations as you work it down so you have less to work with. So for example, if you take a look at this first one right here, what I would do on my calculator is I would go 3 cubed minus 2 squared. Well, that gives you 4. Sorry, 3 times 3 cubed is 27. 27 take away 4, that's like 23. All right, now 23 to the power 4 will be next. And you can keep a piece of paper and jot these things down. And that would make it easier for you. Hopefully you're good enough to put it in and have one shot at it. So how can you use the calculator to help you? I guess the final thing is that you can use your calculator to check your work. And what I mean by checking your work is you can check each line. Right? And if each line comes out to be the same as the last answer, you've done it correctly. All right, so let's take a look at page 65, do the assignment. This is lesson 2.3, so we have 2.4 next. So see you next time.